On this episode of Watch Time, we'll be interviewing Allison Halco, the Vice President of Neighborhood Marketing for Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, and we'll be discussing buyers' personas and the importance of knowing your audience right after this. Welcome back to Watch Time, everyone. I'm here with Allison Halco, the Vice President of Neighborhood Marketing for Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about our topic today. And I know we've done some strategizing to try and figure out what to talk about. So I'm really excited. I think there's going to be a lot of information packed into this episode. So I guess kicking it off, let's let everyone know that's listening or watching. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your marketing experience?
I've been doing marketing for quite some time. My degrees are in journalism and graphic design and media management, which kind of lent itself to marketing. All those things make up various components of marketing. I've been involved in marketing Cleveland in various ways for the last 10 plus years, starting with working in digital marketing at Tri-C, and then moving to Cozy and GCP, that's the Council of Smaller Enterprises and Greater Cleveland Partnership. Mm-hmm. And now I'm at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. So my career has kind of gone from marketing Tri-C, saying, hey, come to Cleveland and come to school here, it's great, to starting and working here at Cozy and GCP, start a business here, grow your business here. Northeast Ohio is great for businesses, and now I work for Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, where we want you to move to Cleveland and support our neighborhoods.
So that's what I like about this. What's really cool is you, just as you kind of explained, you have such a various amount of backgrounds in terms of who are you trying to attract, and I think that lends perfectly to our conversation today about target markets and understanding your audience. And I think that obviously played a big role in every time you would shift to a different job. Okay, who are we talking to? Who are we trying to reach? And it's just great to hear that you have all that experience. And obviously we met you and you were at Cozy and GCP, and definitely we enjoyed working with you and learned a lot from your team there. So this is exciting to kind of talk more and understand the strategy behind what you've done. So, okay. So I guess kind of jumping in from there, for people that are listening or watching, I think the biggest thing for a small business owner or a small marketing team, they probably heard the buzzwords, target market, buyer's persona, customer avatar. And they probably are already thinking oh, well, this is probably just the people that are already buying from me. So can you maybe give us a little more insight into, what is a target market versus a buyer's persona, and who are these people that they should be trying to target?
First of all, the difference between a target market and a persona is really how specific you want to get. So target audience is maybe a more broad, for example, at Tri-C, we want to target college students or, workforce development, people who are going into workforce development. Personas are more specific to, this is a pretend person who could actually want your product or your service. It's, you give them a name, you give them an age, demographics, you build out this pretend person and say, who would they want to buy from, or what would they want to buy? What are they looking for? This specific person, as opposed to a group of people who are a little more broad. So, for example, right now at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, we look at one of our target markets or target audiences is people who are looking to move to Cleveland, right? Our persona might be Ashley, who's 22 and just graduated college and is looking for her first apartment in the city. So that is a specific person, and how do we cater to her, as opposed to how do we cater to recent college grads? That's the difference between the two.
That's a great explanation. I think that really helps, I think, in a nice, simple way to illustrate this for anyone that's listening, because I know there's a lot of confusion around it. And I know when we work with our clients and we're trying to get very specific on who do we create this video for, they're kind of have that mentality of it's for everyone, and I guess, can you maybe talk a little bit about why is it so important that I think a lot of people can understand why you're trying to get specific on a specific market, but why is it so important that you drill down into actually having an avatar and a person that you're trying to reach?
That is a great question because it's easy to say, oh, I have this product and it's for everybody. Everybody should love it. There's a place in everybody's home for it. And that might be the case, but that's going to be true in very, very few cases, very few scenarios. So it's important to at least segment your audience, because everybody, your product or service might appeal to a broad group of people, but that group all can be segmented to all have different needs or wants for your product or service. And it's important to understand that so you can better reach them where they are and target them for their needs. You could have a coffee cup, and there might be a segment of audience who really wants it to drink coffee from. Great. You know what they want it from. There might be a whole nother segment who just really likes to have a mug to put pens on their desk for. And that's a completely different audience that you're marketing to. It's kind of right now I'm marketing Cleveland neighborhoods, right? So it's kind of like looking at Cleveland as a whole and saying, Cleveland's for everybody. And that's not really true. I will argue that if you are looking to move to Cleveland or come hang out in Cleveland proper, the city, not every neighborhood is going to be for you, but there will be at least one neighborhood that is for you. And it's the importance of knowing the difference in that too. You can't just say, come to Cleveland. You can't say, come to Cleveland. It's great, but it'll be more impactful if you really target who your audience is and what they're looking for, and then try to do a little bit of matchmaking in the right neighborhood for them.
So what I love about this is, and what's going off in my mind, and correct me if I'm thinking of this wrong, because we talk a lot on this podcast, and even with our clients, about pain points. We're trying to figure out what our customers' pain points are, and we're trying to address those in the video. And really, when you talk about like the needs, like the coffee cup scenario, or even like the Cleveland neighborhoods, you're really talking about, am I correct in saying like addressing their pain point? Like everyone has a different need, different pain that they're trying to solve. And when you get specific like that, you're connecting with people saying like, obviously the person that wants to put pens in this, they're not going to have the same like, well, I need a cup that's going to be able to hold X amount of liquid and going to be able to withstand X amount of temperature, or go in the dishwasher. Like those pain points are not going to be the same. They're going to be probably like looking for something like, I need a cup where it can be this tall because I need to be able to hold this type of like writing utensil in it, and it needs to have this cool design on it because I want people to know like this is like part of who I am. Like, so it's different. Am I correct saying different pain points?
It's different pain points, and that's where the personas and audience segmentation comes in, because really diving deep into your customer, your potential customer, your desired customer, and what their pain points are, and really understanding things they might not even understand yet themselves, helps you market your product or service better to them.
That's great. That's awesome. Like I love the explanations. I love it's perfect. And I think it's a very important thing that I feel like a lot of like small business owners especially, and a lot of like smaller marketing teams may fall flat on, because it's just, I feel like it's a simple thing that it's maybe not necessarily simple to go and do all the research to get it to where it needs to be, but it's simple enough that they're not thinking to that capacity when they're trying to market their product. Yeah,
exactly. And just human nature, putting yourself in someone else's shoes is hard, especially when you are super familiar and super close with your product or service. To put yourself in the shoes of your customer or potential customer, desired customer, someone you want to be interested in your product or service, when it's so close to you because you live and breathe it every day, that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I want to address too, just kind of like, I guess from the other side of this, because I'm hearing all these great points and I'm thinking like, this is fantastic. But I know there are business owners on the other side that are saying, we've had this conversation before where they're saying, like, this is great, but I'm really afraid that if I narrow my focus down, to, John or to Kim or whoever like you've designed the buyer's persona for, what's going to end up happening is I'm going to leave a big chunk of my market out, and they're not going to buy from me because they're going to feel like my product or service isn't for me. So I'd rather just stay broad. I'd rather cast that broad net so I get more business. Can you maybe address that a little bit? And, is this a true statement?
No, not usually. There might be a few cases where that I just cannot think of off the top of my head where sure, it's best to broadly market your item, but really it'll be more impactful if you at least segment your audience. And it doesn't have to be just one persona. You can have, 3 or 4, even 5 different, people who have different uses, are in different walks of life, different demographics, have different needs, and really focus in on those. And maybe there's some overlap, hopefully not. So you could segment it a little bit further. But if there's some overlap, that's fine. And really target them. And by targeting them and honing in on those and focusing in, you'll be able to really see growth in those areas. And you'll pick up some extra people along the way. I'm sure it's inevitable. But if you cast a wide net broadly and just hope for the best without really researching who exactly wants your products, it's a little bit of a gamble. It might pay off and you might get lucky, but doing that research and really targeting is what will make the most impacts.
So I don't know if we talked about this like when we were trying to set this episode up and we were kind of going through topics, but I'm a big fan of story brand. So building a story brand from Donald Miller, and really believe in his books. And I use a lot of like his different methods, his story brand method within how we're actually creating our videos and things like that. And he often like uses a phrase, if you confuse, you lose. If you write a message for everyone, then nobody knows who that message is for. And I feel like that's what you basically just addressed, and like in a really great way to like explain to like our listeners like how that actually works. That's
100%. And really framing it in storytelling is a great way too, because we all like stories. We all watch our, Instagram feeds for stories or TV shows or commercials or whatever, but we want that narrative, right? So it's not just, hey, here's a mug, come buy it. It's here's what it can do for you and how it can fit in your life and what a great thing it is. Just having that start to finish. Letting people see themselves as part of your story or see your product or service as part of their own story and life is really just putting it all into storytelling is key.
That's great. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. One thing I did want to backtrack for a brief second. I did want to ask you, just for people that maybe are watching, like if they're thinking, okay, so I need a persona, I need a target market, where do they go to find the information to try and build that out? Like where's a great place for them to start so they could start to build out a target market for their product or service, and then a persona?
How much time do you have? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Because we could talk at length about all the different ways you can go about doing that, and it really depends on what you're starting with. So for example, at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, one of the first things I did when I started last year was looking at our digital analytics. So who's coming to our website, who's following us on social media, but we already had that data. So it's something that I can look at and say, these are people who are following us, engaging with us, our message is resonating with them. Here's who we already have. And based on that, and maybe some common sense and talking to people in the field, who we can expect to reach, or who we should target, who are not reaching we're not reaching who we should be and who we should target. But if you're starting from scratch, that's completely different if you don't have anything to start with. So that all goes out the door. It's if you're starting from scratch, it's going to be a little bit of trial and error. Do research in similar products and services and who they seem to be targeting or their message seems to be resonating with, and take it from there. But I think the important thing is to be flexible if you are testing it out, because that's something that's great about marketing is you can always tweak your message, and you can always tweak you can re-edit a video, you can tweak your digital messaging, your social media posts. You can always easily pivot if you're not hitting who you think you should be hitting, or if by some happy surprise you say, oh, I thought I was targeting this group, but this group is really engaging with my content. Let's engage them a little more and do a little bit of that and target them a little more. That is a long-winded answer. There's no one right way to do your personas, but it's and you can always hire a marketing consultant too, who is can devote 100% of their time to researching it for you. No, there's a lot of ways.
That's a great answer. I mean, you could definitely tell, that you have a marketing background, you're in marketing, because you're like, I was going to ask you, like, when you were answering the first question and saying, like, okay, here's how we found our personas. And I was like, well, I know somebody's going to be watching this. Like, well, I don't have any data. And you're already like, well, let me already address that person. So, like, that was great. And, like, I do think there is so much that we can cover. And, like, I feel like we could have a whole conversation at length just trying to discover that. One tool I did want to mention for anyone that's watching, and I'll have to make a note to like throw this in the actual comment section so you can get a link to this, but HubSpot's got a really nice tool where you can build a persona, and we've used that for our company. And I think it's neat that you can kind of fill all those things out.
HubSpot is great.
It's free.
And it's free. We have to give them an email address, I think, and they'll, bother you by email, but that's it. It's free.
Yeah.
And they have so many, yes, for personas, but also marketing templates and social media calendars and all sorts of. So I'm a big fan.
Yeah, so they give so much great quality content away for the price of an email address. Right. So, but yeah, we'll throw some links in the comment or down in the description. That way, if you're interested in checking that out, because it was a really cool tool to be able to just plug things in, and then it kind of you could choose an image, and you could really just build out a persona. So it was kind of a neat way to get started for people that maybe aren't sure. Okay, so now we've talked a little bit about building out the persona. We've talked about some I guess some things that people might say why this wouldn't work for them. Let's go from here and let's talk a little bit about how the buyer's persona plays into your content. I know you kind of talked about that a little bit with the coffee cup analogy, but I guess what should small business owners or small marketing teams, once they have their persona in place, what should they consider when picking content topics now that they know who that persona is, and what should they consider when they're maybe trying to pick a platform on where they're going to put their message?
That's huge, right? That is the question. Once you've defined your personas and you know who you want to target, at least initially, then it's time to research where those people are going. You want to meet your audience where they are. They're not going to come to you, so you have to go to them, right? So look at, if you have their demographics, and maybe if they're on the younger side, well, not necessarily anymore. Maybe if they're in the demographic that's on TikTok, which I think is 14 to probably 40 at this point. I think the pandemic, everyone kind of got on TikTok. Growing. It's not super young anymore. But if that is a audience that, just some simple Googling, or probably HubSpot too. Yeah. Go back to where are these people going? If you're targeting, moms in their 40s, where are they going? Where are they spending their time? I guess would be Instagram off the top of my head. But you really want to go where they are. And it takes a little bit of research. But again, it's all widely available on the World Wide Web. This wonderful thing we have. But it's just making sure you meet them where they are. And it's getting, and that's part of the beauty in narrowing down your focus is your target audience going to see a billboard on the freeway? Maybe, probably not, but you can tell exactly where they're going to be once you deep dive a little bit. And again, putting yourself in their shoes and saying, okay, if I'm this person, where am I going to be? Where am I going to be looking? Where am I going to be consuming my media? And that's the sweet spot.
So it kind of eliminates some of that trial and error, because you've kind of to your point, if you're not trying to reach, if you're trying to reach people maybe 18 to 14, then you maybe know, you're saying TikTok, and maybe Facebook's not the right move for you right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that makes sense. It's really helping you, I guess, better utilize your marketing budget. Or, if you don't have a marketing budget, I don't think small business owners often think about this, but your time is valuable. So you're saving yourself time where you could be expelling energy that you could take that time instead of being across 3 platforms and say, I'm going to go all in.
You don't have to be every single place, in every print publication, in every digital publication, every social media platform. You don't have to be you shouldn't be everywhere, but you can target it. Just target it to where your audience is.
Well, and I guess going from there, one thing I kind of want to talk about, and I'm kind of still on the content side of this, because I know we talked about this when we were discussing this episode, there's probably people out there that they believe in what I'm calling the spaghetti method, where they're we're just going to create all this content and just throw it out there. And then whatever sticks, we get, I guess people from that. But why is that method not a great method? And how does the buyer's persona help you in creating content to avoid that?
Yeah, that's not the best the best method to use just to see what sticks, unless you have a lot of time on your hands for marketing, which most people don't. I think it's fair to say. You can, and I'm going to back up a little bit, because you can have one big, for example, piece of long form content and use it in a million different ways for a million different platforms, and targeting hopefully not a million different personas, but a handful of different personas based on the way you frame it. And what pieces you pick and choose and highlight out of that one long blog post or one long video or one long whatever it is. So I'm not saying you need to create totally from scratch a new piece of content every time you want to hit every single audience. You can start big and chop it up and cut it down and reframe things. But again, it's just making sure you're hitting, like you said, the pain points. You want to make sure that what you're saying is resonating with your audience and your target audience. And the same message isn't going to resonate with with different groups. They have different pain points. You need to speak to those pain points. And that's why it's important to target them through your content and what you're saying and really cater your message to them.
So it's really like looking at that persona and saying, okay, like this is, here's persona 1, 2, and 3. So so persona 1 content should be on XYZ, and that'll work for persona 1. But then like you also know, and maybe like video, because it's going to go on a video first platform. Whereas like persona 2, you might say, well, their pain point's different. And they're not of the age group that may be on a video first platform. They may be on like Facebook or something like that. So maybe video is not the answer for that right now. So really it's being able to kind of identify those different, okay. That makes. Am I right in saying that?
100%. Okay. But I'll just say you're sharing the same overarching message that is buy my product or service. It's for you. Just the little points are different. Yeah. And what you're highlighting.
Well, and I kind of want to like use that opportunity from what you're saying to like offer some advice to people that are watching, because like at least from the video perspective of like what they could be doing, and like this is something that we kind of do with clients too, is if you're going to create a product or service overview video, like here's our product or services, one thing to think about when you're writing that script out or coming up with those pain points is, to your point, who are my personas? And you can't really do that, like what I'm about to explain, unless you know who your personas are. But who are my personas and which pain points apply to them? So you give a nice, to your point, like a nice 5 to 8 minute maybe overview video that you like end up recording, which explains your product or services. But then you can then break up pain point 1 for avatar 1, pain point 2 for avatar 2, and so on and so forth. So you can break that up. And so now your half day of shooting or full day of shooting, depending on what you need to get done, is now been turned into, you have the main video for when, in case anybody lands on your website, on your like services page. And then you have those individual videos that can be broken out to landing pages or broken out into like different social content and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. If your business is a bakery, for example, and you have one great video saying, oh, we make cakes and we make cookies and we make all different sorts of wonderful goodness, that's great. If I'm a mom and I have a kid whose birthday is coming up and I see a video that says, hey, we do kids' birthday cakes, wonderful. That resonates with me immediately. Whereas, otherwise I could watch your video and be like, oh, that's really great. Maybe one day I'll visit there. But if you speak to me where I am and my needs, 100%, you're that much more likely to get me to come in and order.
I feel like you could drill down even further and be like, if you're a mom that needs a kid's birthday cake, but needs it within 24 hours because you know.
Not that ever happens.
But it's like now you're drilling down even more.
Right.
So. But no, that's definitely, that's great advice. And I think that's important. I think when people are creating content, they don't realize the power that, like, because we preach that a lot with our clients, and we preach it on this podcast, is the importance of pre-production, pre-planning. And that's where the creating your target market and the personas come in, because you can do so much more versus just let's shoot a video and maybe it's for everybody, or let's write a big blog post and maybe it's just for everyone, and then you're not using your time to the best of your ability.
Right.
So that's great. That's been great advice. So taking it from there, one thing I really want to talk about is talking about, like, now that we have the content, and I know I had teased this in the title, like talking about the importance of why knowing your audience, like why this is important when you're creating content, and that sometimes some content isn't right for some audiences, and sometimes it's better for others. So can we talk a little bit about, like, why it's important to know your persona and like how that could play into the type of content, whether it needs to be overly produced or DIY, things like that?
Yes, that is a great topic. I feel like we could be here all afternoon. No, that speaks again to meeting your audience where they are, but also feeling authentic to where they are. So if I am on, you mentioned DIY. If I'm on Pinterest and I'm looking for DIY, I don't know, birthday party ideas, because I'm thinking birthday cakes still. And I see your product, but it is like super glossy and slick and maybe very, in your face, salesy. Oh, that doesn't really feel like what I'm looking for and what I'm expecting to find. And that, frankly, is probably going to feel a little off-putting to me. But if it's very authentic and homegrown, what I'm expecting to see on that platform, then it's much more likely to resonate with me. Similarly, we've talked about TikTok a bit. I think TikTok is a perfect example of this, because when you go on TikTok, you expect to see maybe a little more homegrown videos where it looks like someone is just doing a point and shoot, and you have, that voice that narrates everything, and I can't imitate it. Otherwise I would, but the voice I'm talking about that everybody uses on TikTok. And and you see brands doing that too, playing into that, because they know for TikTok in particular, that's what people want to see. And if you have a super highly produced commercial looking video, that's not what people there are expecting to see, and they'll flip right past that. So it's really knowing your audience and the avenues that you're using to reach them.
I think that's a great way to explain it, because I do feel like, a lot of times, when we connect with customers, they want to use, and I get this, they want to use what we've created for them everywhere they can. And I don't think they realize, and I try to get this info out to them, it's like, we can repurpose this, but like, it may not be the best use case everywhere. Not to say you can't throw it out there and try it, because, it's marketing, trial and error, and see, like, maybe it'll take off. But like, I mean, that's something I've noticed with, like, we've experimented with our own TikTok, and we're still trying to experiment, because we try and use some of our videos that are produced in there, and they don't do as well as people that I know that are also in our, marketing video industry, where they just have, phone camera talking to camera, because that's what people are showing up to see. They, to your point, they feel like if things are overly produced, then this is probably something a little salesy, and I don't want to buy into something salesy. I want educational content to move me forward, or funny content to make me laugh and, move my day forward. So I feel like that's awesome advice to like think about it from that perspective. I do think too, like, one thing that maybe think about, and I try and explain this to some clients, maybe we could talk a little bit about this, is, if you're creating content that's going to like a C-suite, like they're going to expect a different level of production versus if you're sending out content that's going to go to the community.
Yeah, that was like perfectly said. C-suite, and think about, again, it's all about putting yourself in their shoes, which is hard. It's hard to do, but think about what they're used to seeing, what they are familiar with, what they're expecting. And sometimes surprising them in that way could work in your favor, but that's a risk, right? And I think generally speaking, thinking about what they're used to seeing and what they're expecting, and making sure you at least fit mostly into that in terms of presentation is important. Yeah. And you're right, C-suite and community is the perfect example.
Well, and I think what's great about that, and I'm going to use your bakery analogy, and tell me if you think this is spot on, because I actually had a conversation similar to this with a client a few weeks ago, is, like when you have a bakery, like, so let's say you're selling baked goods to the public, and then you're saying like, I want to do a video for the public about my bakery, about my cakes, and about, like how I have cakes for 24 hours for moms, like they can get a cake turned around. But then let's say you're like, we also have baked goods that we want to start offering to grocery stores, and we want to start offering, to corporate clients and things like that. So we want to do a video for that as well. Oftentimes what I would coach clients to do is like, well, if you're going to put this on your website, we always tell people, if you're going to put something on your website, it probably should be decently produced, because the video is like your 24-hour salesman. So you want it to be polished and like kind of know what they're talking about so people can understand your brand. But it's like, if you're going to be pushing this out to social media or sending this in an email, you probably want to stop your recording of you talking about the cakes and then do something with your phone. But then like, if you're also going to send, and that's going to go to the moms, and they're going to be like, oh, wow, it's genuine, authentic person. But then if you're going to send that video out to a business or send that out to a grocery store, and you're going to want to try and get your stuff picked up and distributed, that's probably going to be where you step back in front of the camera. We create something polished that looks like, your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, and like your professional business, because they want to do business with somebody who is professional and things of that nature.
Right. And I think the content and the messaging is just as important in how it's presented and the kind of marketing avenue you take in that respect too.
And it goes back to the avatar. So we just went full circle back to the avatar. So like, I feel like we've covered a lot of great topics. Like we were covering the avatar. We covered like why that's important for your content. We covered like content creation and why you need to know your audience. There's so many different pieces that we've discussed. Can you maybe narrow this down and give me like 3 things that you really felt were important in this episode? So like 3 things you really want our listeners, our viewers to take away.
Number 1 is know your audience. And if you don't know your audience, research your audience and find out, develop those segments and avatars and personas and figure out who you are speaking to. 2 is meet your audience where they are. Once you've researched them, go to where they are. They're not going to come to you. They're not going to stumble across your website. If they do, that would be an amazing, like lucky chance for you. But you go find them where they are and cater to that avenue. And then 3rd, I would say be flexible. If you find that your message is resonating with people you weren't expecting it to, or maybe isn't exactly hitting the marks, you're not seeing the engagement or the sales you're expecting, then switch it up a little bit. You don't have to do a complete overhaul. Just make some tweaks. Look at what isn't working and tweaks to take advantage of the people who are there and it is resonating with. And go from there. Marketing isn't a one and done deal. It's ever evolving and you constantly have to stay on top of it. And that's not a bad thing to keep innovating and keep switching a little bit.
Those are great pieces of advice. Hopefully everybody watching, listening, wrote those down. Pause. I said something. Pause this. Go back, write them down because they're great pieces of advice. And I talked about this. We had a lighting episode and I talked about how lighting is like something that I could like basically gave an analogy. It's like golf, like you're constantly improving over time, to get your lighting just right. And I feel like marketing is no different. It's like golf. You have to constantly be working and refining. The only difference is like, it's kind of more like golf and then going like to a more professional course because every once in a while, like, or every so often they change the game and you have to figure out how to do it again.
Yep. That's exactly true. There's a new social media platform everyone's on and you need to invent for them. There's always something.
Algorithm changes and then
someone buys a social media network. Like it's always changing and evolving. And your audience is evolving too.
So it's just constantly keeping up to date. And that is one thing I guess to mention. And just for people that are listening, maybe you could touch on that briefly, even though I know you gave us your 3 points, is the buyer's persona something where once you do it, you're done? Or is it something you have to constantly be updating?
I would say regularly updating. Constantly feels like that's a lot of pressure. But it's something you should be regularly checking in on and really seeing, 1, if you're hitting the marks you think you're hitting. 2, if there are any surprises. If, I thought I was targeting this group, but my message for them is really resonating with this other group. That's great. Like, do what you need to do to get more of them involved. And also to see how their needs might be changing. People aren't stagnant. We all live our lives and change and evolve and our needs change and evolve with them. So it's one thing to say, I want to target moms who need a 24-hour birthday cake. And that is your market. Great. You can continue to target moms who need 24-hour birthday cakes. But you know what? In a few years, those moms might need 24-hour graduation cakes.
True. And
they're already your customers. So maybe you expand to have another persona where it's a mom of slightly older kids. And then, they're going to need their kids are going to need wedding cakes. Hopefully not 24-hour wedding cakes. That's a whole nother conversation. But I'm just saying your audience will evolve. And their needs will evolve. And it's fine to continue to demographically target the same people. But if you already have customers who have had good experiences with you, you might as well go on their life's journey with them because they'll have needs you can still fill.
That's great advice. Thank you for, because I was just thinking about this, like somebody's going to be watching this and they're going to say, okay, well, I built this and now I'm good. But I think it's important which you touched on. So I really appreciate you talking about that. And I guess where can our like listeners and viewers, like where can they go if they want to like connect with you or learn more about you and your background?
Oh, LinkedIn is probably the best way. I'm Allison Halco on LinkedIn. I'm open to requests, so find me on there and message me and request me, and I'm happy to have more connections. But that's probably the best way to find me.
Perfect. Well, we will put that in the comments so people can connect with you on LinkedIn and learn more about you and your experience. And thank you for coming on the show with me today. And I really appreciate all your insight.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks for listening to Watch Time. We hope you guys enjoyed today's episode.
And remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes.
And if you want your question answered on our podcast, go to flexmediacle.com/watchtime.